morning.
Good morning.
Kalimera.
Kalimera.
During this Christmas season, I think everywhere we look, we see advertisements for different kinds of presents. And I don't know about you, but I've been seeing a lot of commercials about jewelry this year that I've been noticing. One commercial I recently saw was a couple, man and a woman, walking through the snow. And there was all these beautiful Christmas trees outside, and there was decorations and lights everywhere. And of course, they're smiling and having fun, and there's a romantic song playing, etc. The man eventually takes out a box in his pocket, gets on one knee, opens the box, and it's of course a diamond ring. And anyway, you know the rest. The tagline after this commercial is done, I forget what jewelry company it was advertising, but the tagline was, "More than a gift." More than a gift. And indeed it is. It is very true. It's actually very sharp advertising, very smart of these folks who are putting this together. And I don't know one more detail, if you've noticed, but it seems like every time in one of these commercials, whether it is a ring or something else, often they're advertising diamonds. I don't see very often a picture of a ruby or an emerald or an opal or a topaz. Some of the ladies are laughing now. It's true. It's always about a diamond, because a diamond indeed symbolizes a lot of things in our culture. Not so much in the old country. It's a little bit different in the old country, but obviously a man does not propose to a woman in America without a diamond, essentially, or eventually getting a diamond and putting a ring on her hand, right? So in that way, the tagline is very true. When someone gives something like this, it is more than a gift. It's also a promise. And that's a slogan that you also see in jewelry commercials. A promise. Promise. A promise means many different things to many different people. But for everyone, we know that a promise is different from a wish. It is different from an idea. It is different from all other kinds of statements that we can make. A promise is an unwritten dedication, if you will. It is an unwritten confirmation that something is going to happen. Right? That's what a promise means. That's what makes it a promise and not something else. That's what makes a diamond ring different from another kind of ring, because it includes a promise. And so truly, yes, it is more than a gift. But when we think about promises, my brothers and sisters, have we ever had a promise made to us and had it fulfilled? Have we ever made a promise to someone else and fulfilled it? Either as a spouse, a parent, an employee, a neighbor, a friend, whatever it might be. And conversely, have we ever had a promise made to us that was not fulfilled? Have we ever made a promise to someone else and did not fulfill it? Again, either to our spouse or our kids or whoever it might be in our life. When we do that, how does that make us feel about promises? How does that make us feel about that person in general? And is it possible, brothers and sisters, this is my question this morning, that because of our experiences in life that are negative when it comes to someone promising something, do we ever find ourselves trusting a little bit less in promises? Do we ever find ourselves trusting a little bit less in people? The people of God, brothers and sisters, when we open the Bible, whether in the Old Testament or the New Testament, we're concerned with this very question. They were looking for a Messiah. They were looking for someone who was going to come and liberate them. They were looking for someone who was going to come and take them out of their mire, to solve something in their life, a problem in their life, many problems in their life, a great deal. But at the time that Jesus Christ came, at the time the incarnation took place, were people asking themselves then, were they at the point looking around in their life at the Roman soldiers occupying their country, at perhaps poverty and taxation and all kinds of other things that were afflicting them, were they also questioning if the promise of the Messiah was going to be kept? Or, like many other promises, as I'm sure was the case with humanity back then as well, were they asking themselves, were those empty words? Is that a promise that is going to go unfulfilled, like other promises that we have seen in our own life? Is it a promise that is going to be broken? St. Paul talks a little bit about this today in his epistle. And he talks about promise. He talks about promise. And he lists many great figures of the Old Testament. And he says, as great as they were, he says, even they did not get to see what we have seen. Because we have seen what was promised, he says. We have gotten to experience what was promised. And he mentions the word promise specifically in several other places in this epistle. And this is why the church places this reading right before Christmas Day. The Sunday before Christmas, we read the epistle in which St. Paul talks about promises. And we hear in the gospel about promises as well. We hear about the entire genealogy and how many years the people were waiting. And yet, despite all those years, God ultimately fulfilled his promise in sending his Son to earth. And that is when the incarnation took place, brothers and sisters. And that is exactly what we are celebrating now. That truly, yes, it is more than a gift. It is a fulfillment of a promise. It is a fulfillment of a promise. Regardless of what we might think in our lives, brothers and sisters, and regardless of how many promises in our life might be broken when we hear them, or even in ourselves, in promises that we make and in our own human failings, if we ever renege on a promise, and this perhaps colors what we think of with promises, I am here to tell you that when God makes a promise, it is different. When God makes a promise, it is always fulfilled. Always. God does not break his promises. God does not renege on his promises. God does not later change his mind and say, well, I know I said that, but I'm feeling differently now, so no, we're not going to do that. That's not who God is. God, in his infinite love for all of us, makes promises to us because he loves us. Just like the lover who says, I am making you a promise, and I'm going to fulfill it because I love you, he says. That is what Christmas season is about. And when we open the scriptures, by the way, it's not just a promise of the incarnation and the Messiah. Do you know that God makes upwards of 7,000 promises in the scriptures? I will do this. Many, many thousands of promises God makes. Many have been fulfilled already. Many will be fulfilled. But in both cases, they are fulfilled. They are always fulfilled. And let us have great confidence in this. Because it is also Stewardship Sunday, let me take a little parenthesis and say, when God promises to take care of us, that includes many different aspects of our lives. And so when he blesses us with things, and he calls and says, please give to one another, and this is another thing we focus on in the Christmas season too, is giving, is almsgiving. Mercy giving is another good word for it, as it is translated in Greek. And if God says, if you give, I will take care of you, that is another promise. I am going to take care of you. And I'm not going to let you fall. That's every aspect of our life, and including when it comes to giving. There is a proverb that says, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your steps. In all your ways acknowledge him, capital H, and he will direct your steps. That too is a promise. He will direct your steps. St. Paisios said, when someone abandons himself to God, God does not abandon him. When someone abandons himself to God, God does not abandon him. Let us take great comfort in these words, my brothers and sisters, that again, the promises that we hear from human beings anywhere in society are not the same as the promises of God. The promise is what we celebrate. The promise fulfilled is what changed the course of human history when Jesus Christ came. It is a promise that God will take care of us, always. God will always and is always with us because of his great love for us, which never changes, and that too is a promise. Let us have great confidence in this as we go through our life and experience whatever challenges we're going through. And whatever questions we have about where we're going and what will happen in our lives, let us always, always remember that the one constant is Jesus Christ. And that will never change.